They didn't they mean to start a diplomatic crisis, they just didn't they take him seriously. When the Terran diplomatic envoy entered the chamber, no one stood, that was the first sign. Across the circular hall, dozens of alien representatives watched him with mild curiosity, some amused, some bored. One openly smirking. To them, humanity was new, unproven, emotionally volatile, physically average, not impressive. And definitely not threatening. The Carthan representative leaned toward his translator and whispered, loudly enough for half the chamber to hear, "Is that their negotiator?" A few quiet laughs followed. The human didn't react. He simply walked to his assigned position, placed a thin data slate on the table, and waited. The dispute was simple on paper. A mining colony in neutral space had been seized. The colony was funded partly by Earth investors. The occupying faction claimed it was strategic necessity. Earth called it theft, the Council called it complicated, the human called it temporary. That word made several delegates exchange looks. Temporary. The Carthan ambassador leaned back in his chair. "You misunderstand," he said smoothly. "The occupation is permanent." More soft laughter. The human envoy finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Permanent decisions," he said calmly, "require permanent consequences." Silence flickered across the chamber, then the Carthan smiled. "You are in no position to threaten us." "I'm not threatening you," the human replied, "I'm informing you." Sibiral Council members shifted uncomfortably. They had read the reports. The Carthan hadn't they believed them. Humanity had a pattern. They negotiated first, warned second, acted third, but when they acted, they did not repeat themselves. The Carthan ambassador leaned forward. "You are a minor power. Your fleet cannot project force this far. Your economy is dependent on Council trade routes. And your species has been here less than 50 cycles." The human nodded slightly, all accurate. That confused them. Then he continued, "and outdated." A subtle murmur passed through the chamber. The human tapped the data slate once. A holographic projection filled the center of the room. Trade routes, energy corridors, logistics chains, highlighted in blue, Carthan territory, highlighted in red. Small blinking nodes appeared along the edges, human fleet signatures, quiet, precise, already in position. The room temperature seemed to drop. "You moved fleets without Council authorization," one delegate hissed. The human tilted his head. "No oppose, we moved them within our trade protection rights." Technically true, legally airtight, politically terrifying. The Carthan ambassador's smirk was gone now. "You would not risk war over a mining colony." The human's expression did not change. "We are not risking war." He zoomed the projection. "Supply depots, energy junctions, choke points, all of these," he said quietly, "are about to experience technical failures. No weapons fired. And no open aggression, just disruption, economic suffocation, strategic paralysis. This is coercion," someone whispered. The human looked around the chamber slowly. "Yes." It didn't deny it. He owned it. "Withdraw from the colony," he continued calmly, "restore its autonomy. Compensate displaced workers, publicly acknowledge error," and the fleet movement stopped. A long silence. The Carthan ambassador's jaw tightened. "You planned this before you arrived?" The human's answer was immediate. "Yes." Music pause. Zoom on alien reactions, fear, understanding, regret, because the truth was now clear. The human diplomat had never come to negotiate from weakness. He had come to present options. And every option ended the same way, with humanity in control.
The chamber didn't erupt into chaos. That's what made it worse. No shouting, and dramatic outrage. Just calculation. Because every species in that room understood what they were seeing. This wasn't a bluff. The human fleets were already positioned. Supply lanes mapped. Energy relays identified. Choke points selected. And the Terran envoy had walked in smiling. The Carthan ambassador activated a private channel. His posture stiff now. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Until these so-called technical failures begin?" The human checked nothing, didn't look at the hologram, didn't consult a device. 3 minutes. The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. Across Carthan space, automated systems began reporting anomalies. Cargo inspections delayed. Jump routes temporarily suspended. Fuel transfers under review. Insurance flags triggered. Trade algorithms rerouting traffic away from Carthan markets. Not explosions, not attacks, just friction, tiny delays. But in an interstellar economy, minutes cost millions. Hours cost governments. Back in the chamber, the first alert pinged. The Carthan ambassador's display flickered. His aide leaned close, whispering urgently, "Another alert." Then another. The human did nothing, he simply stood there, calm, watching understanding spread across alien faces. "You're destabilizing, eh?" "Sovereign power," one counselor accused. "No," the human replied evenly. "They destabilized themselves when they assumed we wouldn't respond." More alerts. Energy prices spiking. Shipping contracts suspended. Neutral carriers refusing entry. Why? Because human trade networks were vast and subtle and patient. The galaxy had underestimated how deeply integrated humanity already was. They thought humans were militarily restrained. They hadn't noticed the economic expansion. The Carthan ambassador stood abruptly. "This is economic warfare." The human shook his head slightly. "No weapons have been fired. No borders crossed. No treaties violated." A pause. "We're simply choosing where not to trade." That sentence hit harder than any missile, because war was dramatic. Sanctions were survivable, but coordinated disengagement from a rising power, that was suffocation. Another message flashed across the chamber display. Carthan outer colonies requesting clarification. Investors pulling contracts point to minor allies issuing temporary distancing statements. The ripple effect had started, and it was spreading faster than anyone predicted. The Carthan ambassador's earlier confidence was gone. You would collapse regional stability over one mining world? The human met his gaze. "You misunderstand. This isn't about the colony. A beat. It's about precedent." That word settled into the room like gravity, that if humanity allowed this seizure, others would try. And humans didn't allow patterns that ended in chaos. They ended them early, quietly, completely. The council now faced a new realization. This wasn't a volatile species. This wasn't emotional retaliation. This was controlled pressure, measured out pre-planned. Reversible, if compliance happened. The human checked an unseen timer in his mind. 2 minutes remain, he said calmly. Gasps. "You gave us no formal deadline." Someone protested. "I did," he replied, "when I entered the room." Across the network, another wave of disruptions rolled through Carthan systems. Banking nodes slowed. Energy arbitration delayed. Freight corridors rerouted around their territory. Markets reacted instantly. Stock valuations dipped, then dipped harder. The Carthan ambassador's communicator buzzed continuously now, his own government demanding updates, asking what he had done, what he had triggered, what humanity wanted. And for the first time since the meeting began, he looked uncertain, not angry, not arrogant, uncertain. The human stepped forward slightly, lowered his voice. "You can end this. Withdraw. Compensate. Acknowledge." The words were simple, not dramatic, not aggressive. Just final point, 1 minute remaining. The chamber lights seemed dimmer now, or maybe it was just the mood, because everyone understood something profound. Humanity didn't need to shout, didn't need to threaten, didn't need spectacle. They applied pressure exactly where it mattered, and they stopped the moment compliance occurred. The Carthan ambassador swallowed. For the first time since the Terran envoy arrived, he looked smaller. The final alert arrived before the timer ended. Not another disruption. Not another market drop, not a direct transmission. Carthan Prime. Priority override. The ambassador's display lit up with the crest of his own government. He hesitated, then activated it publicly. The chamber watched, silent. The Carthan High Chancellor appeared on the holographic screen. Older, sharper, and visibly furious. But not at the human his own representative. "We have reviewed the situation," the Chancellor said tightly. "Why?" His eyes shifted briefly toward the Terran envoy. "Were we not informed of the full scope of Terran economic integration?" The ambassador had no answer, because he hadn't believed the reports. The Chancellor continued. "The colony in question will be evacuated immediately." A ripple moved across the chamber. Gasps, whispers, shock. Compensation packages will be issued to displaced workers. Public acknowledgement of territorial overreach will be transmitted within the hour. And trade normalization with Terra will resume upon confirmation of fleet repositioning. The chamber felt like it was tilting. The human hadn't raised his voice once, and a sovereign power had just reversed policy in under 10 minutes. The Chancellor's gaze locked on the human envoy, Terran representative. We regret the misunderstanding. There it was. Not quite an apology, but close enough. The human inclined his head slightly. We appreciate your swift correction. No smugness in triumph. Just acknowledgement. Across the hologram, red markers began fading to blue. Human fleet's signatures shifted position, not retreating in panic, not withdrawing in fear, simply repositioning as promised. Pressure applied. Objective achieved. Pressure released. The council chamber was quiet, not because they feared violence, but because they had just witnessed something more unsettling: control. Absolute, measured control. The Carthan ambassador slowly lowered himself back into his seat. His earlier smirk was gone, replaced with something colder. Respect Point, one of the smaller council species, finally spoke. You destabilized an empire without firing a shot. The human turned toward them. No, he replied calmly. We stabilized a boundary. That line lingered, because that was the difference. Carthan had acted out of expansion. Humanity had acted out of containment. Not dominance. Not revenge, containment. The council adjourned shortly after, delegates leaving in quiet clusters, some avoiding the Terran envoy, others studying him carefully, recalculating, revising assumptions. As he walked toward the exit, the same Carthan representative who had mocked him earlier spoke quietly. You came prepared for our refusal. The human stopped, yes. And if we had not withdrawn? The envoy's expression didn't change. Then the next phase would have begun. A pause. You would not have enjoyed it. He continued walking. In dramatic music. In triumphant speech. Just calm footsteps echoing through the chamber. Because the galaxy had just learned something important. Humans do not shout. They do not posture. They do not escalate emotionally. They calculate. They prepare. And when they respond, they finish what they start.